Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Phillip Quinones. He is a passionate mental health professional specializing in individual and couples coaching. And we'll learn from him practical tools to navigate more modern relationships, debunk myths about couples therapy, and explore the impact of self care and mindfulness on mental well being. Welcome to the show, Phillip.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Philip. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will
Awesome.
benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We talk about how one can master navigating modern relationships. We learn all about this. But before that, let's learn a bit about you, Philip, so that we know about your background, your journey, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yeah, so my name is Phillip Quinones. I am operating here in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. I did my undergraduate in psychology from Georgia State University, and I have received my master's degree in clinical counseling psychology from Brenau University. So I've been doing this for about on and off, seeing clients about 3 years now. And so I just wanted to be able to bring my expertise to people. I wanted to be able to help different couples. I publish courses, I publish books. Those on my personal website. And so anything that can be insightful and helpful for clients when it comes to mental health, I hope to be very a good resource for them. So that's really what I do. I help people process change as a therapist, and I have treated and helped clients through different psychological and just life circumstances. The most common are trauma, depression, and anxiety. And then within couples, the most common things that I see are obviously infidelity, miscommunications, and just misalignment when it comes to just adjustments in life. So those are the areas that I help individuals and couples in my mental health professional life.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Philip. So I want to understand for the audiences about the type of clients you get. What is it that they come to you for? You talked about a few things, but even at the cost of repetition, just to put emphasis on that is what is it that they generally come to you for? What is it that you bring to them, the way you understand it, that others don't? What is it that how is it that you solve their problems?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when a client comes to me, the number one thing that they're looking to do is change. Change in a human being's nature is very uncomfortable. Okay. We like predictableness. We like knowing that we are safe. We like knowing our environment. And that's a reptilian, animalistic type of feature that we have within our brain. We like to know what is coming and what is around us. So, with that being said, you also notice within your life that there are circumstances that you're realizing that have happened or are happening that are keeping you from having the best experience in your life. So, when you have a repetitiveness of this, or you are apprehensive for doing something going forward, then it's probably a roadblock that you're hitting. And with that being said, that means that you're not having the best positive experience that you can have with whatever it is that you have noticed that you need to change. So you need somebody's help to objectively do that. So as a soft science, compared to a hard science like something that is medical, we have been able to look at human behavior and in different facets be able to record what is helpful with that change. So in the early days, most people are associated with Freud, which is obviously looking at your dreams, looking at your parental relationship, looking at how you were raised as a baby, to more modern times where it's like, okay, we can look at the cognitive side of what are you thinking and how does that make you feel and what things that then facilitates what you do. So when you come to me, a client is saying, hey, I have contemplated that I need to change something. I'm not getting the most out of whatever this experience may be. So I need help with that. And we then go through different steps to diagnose specifically what areas of help they need, because in certain areas they may not need help. So there are clients that may be experiencing a lot of negative emotions or feelings, and they have compressed those. That is what is known as depression. Or you have clients that are so worried about the future, or they are fearing something that may or may not come. That is called anxiety. Okay. And then the third most popular one will probably be trauma, whereas in the past, something has happened to you that has hindered, almost on a neurological level, the growth of your brain and has stopped you from being able to capitalize on the normal pattern that your brain would have gone through if it did not go through that trauma. So now we can go back and actually create new neurological connections that have been evidence based in order to help somebody feel a lot better about the circumstance that they have gone through. And so, what we measure as a therapist or a counselor or a coach, no matter whatever you call it, we look at an improvement of those symptoms. So, if a client is diagnosed with PTSD, they may still have PTSD, but they're maybe not triggered. Maybe they're not they don't their body doesn't respond as often when something influences them. If somebody is depressed, let's say with major depressive disorder, MDD, we can get them to be more mild and moderate. You may still suffer with depression, but we can get you to where you're not bedridden and you're not, not showering or not seeing people socializing, or can experience having good moments with people. That is an improvement. Or anxiousness, like, hey, I don't fear something that may or may not come because I can center myself to be present and be in the moment. Those are improvements. So all I do is help a client do that with evidence that has been shown that anybody going through this specific type of circumstance in life can get through it. And we have recorded through evidence how that looks for that client. So I facilitate that when somebody comes to me in order to help better their life.
Absolutely, absolutely, Philip. Now, in terms of, you see, mental health, everyone looks at mental health in their own way.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to other, they have their own opinion. When it comes to looking at themselves, they have no opinion, or they don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
Everyone has it, and that brings a lot of misconceptions also. So
Yeah.
you talk about, common misconceptions about mental health you wish more people understood. What are some of these common misconceptions still in today's time that you would want people to understand and look at it differently?
Right. So the number one thing that I want somebody to understand is there is a statistic that says 1 out of 8 people on earth have a mental health issue or will experience a mental health issue. That is a lot of people. And those are people that we can just record. So it's probably a lot more than what people would think. That fact, and you know that 1 out of 8 people that either you or somebody else that you meet is experiencing, you're able to look at it a lot differently, because we only judge people based on our subjective experience, what I've gone through, what my values are, what my perception is, what I feel and think about the rest of the world. But when you make considerations for other people, you start to understand them better from an objective standpoint. Because now it's not just about how I feel. No, there are things that people are going through with mental health. It can be things that may be genetic, where it can be depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. It could be addiction, whether somebody has passed that down, because that is also, concluded in genetics. It could be trauma. We know that now evidence is showing that trauma can be passed down as well. So when you have that consideration for other people, you can put yourself more at ease to be in a place to understand instead of judge, not only yourself, but for other people. And so I want people to understand that when it comes to mental well-being, that's just like the same thing as physical well-being. What are you eating? Are you exercising? Are you managing maybe some injuries that you may have? And when you do mental well-being, that could be stress levels, that could be how your relationships are with people, that could be your self-care and your hygiene for yourself, that can be self-improvement, like, hey, I'm not really supposed to be acting the way that I acted 10 years ago. There has to be some growth within myself. And that could be auditing myself and saying, hey, I'm not growing in this type of area, or I keep experiencing this negative type of circumstance. Maybe it's something that I need to change. And so I want people to really understand that when you come to therapy, you are dealt the cards that you are dealt with. What you have been through with life is what you have been through. The difference is that you can make improvements with those, from the most severe type of diagnosis to the more mild and moderate diagnosis. And you can be able to understand and manage yourself better if you have someone to help facilitate that. Because you may or may not know that you have a mental health problem. And that's probably something that why we have to educate people, like, hey, have you been experiencing this? When you were in school, did you have struggle with this? When you socialize, do you have struggle with this? When you've been through this relationship with your parents, have you had this? People don't really think about those things. It's not a subject that you learn in school like mathematics and history and language arts. So it is a life experience to understand mental health, because it's not taught in school as a facilitated, rigorous, and instilled system. So that's what I want people to really understand about mental health, and try to continue to advocate for.
Absolutely. So, Philip, as an individual, how do I know if I have an issue or not? Because everyday life is full of stress.
Yes.
Even looking at the phone can sometimes be informative, but many a times it is stress.
Yeah.
You sleep with stress, you wake up with stress, and then you think that you are okay. You go back to work, and then you think, you have a few laughs, you have a few friends, you have a few drinks.
Yeah.
Sometimes you act like them, sometimes they act like you,
Yeah.
and you just don't know who you are. And amidst all these things, you forget what your mental health is all about, who you actually are. And this is the way you, one fine morning, someone says you are not behaving the way you were, or you are not behaving the way you should be behaving. So
Yeah.
what is the best way to look at myself? Because mirror also will perhaps not tell me that. How do I know whether I am having any issue or not? Because the world only wants things from you they don't care about. Not many will care about.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's a statement that everybody should accept within themselves, that nobody will ever care about your life more than you, even your parents. It is your life. Nobody was you, nobody is you, and nobody will ever be you. So you have control of what that experience may be based on your own free will that you have been granted as you have been able to come and experience being on this earth. But with that being said, the determining factor for you to look at yourself is how much I'm experiencing and how I'm handling that. Because there's probably something that is continuously telling you, hey, I want you to address this. And one of the things that I do with my clients is what I call a self audit. Because people think mental health sometimes always has to do with the brain. And yes, it does, because that's what, operates us as human beings. But it's also about the other facets of your life that may be affected. So, how are your social connections with people? How are your spiritual religious based on your culture? How is your sex life? How are your romantic relationships happening as you are an adult? How are your finances? How are that? Because that's important. You can't live without those. How is your physical? Are you being physically active? Are you moving? Are you eating whole foods? Are you having a balanced, healthy diet? Those are ways that you can audit yourself on top of the mental aspects of your life. And so you may think that, Philip, we need to look at the mental and we have to dive into childhood and we have to dive into the psychological aspects, where sometimes what may be affecting you is another facet. So it's almost like a domino effect. Say, for example, I have an individual that's really struggling in their romantic life, and they're like, well, we have a great friendship. We have good children. We are organized. We make money. we're good, but we're just struggling with stuff. So then I'll say, well, have you spent quality time together? Oh no. Well, why? Because I'm stressing out at work. And then when I'm stressing out at work, I'm coming home and just wanting to be by myself. And now, she or he is having a problem with that. So it's not necessarily that you have a psychological issue. It's the fact of we have to work on your stress management to create time for you to be able to incorporate your partner to improve your relationship. So we don't have to come to couples counseling. We just have to be able to manage your stress. Okay. So that is how I want people to look at their life, is auditing it. So that way you can see, okay, in this area of my life, this is too much for me. It's too much stress. It's too much overwhelmingness. It's causing me to be feeling negative all the time, which could lead to having some symptoms of depression. Or this is a big adjustment and experience in my life, and my body is telling me that it's not meshing with me well. I'm feeling unhealthy. I'm feeling droggy. My sleep is messed up. My libido is low. My appetite is going away. That means that we probably need to address that. So I would say to somebody, do an audit of yourself with that, and that will let you know in what facet of your life is too much for you, which leads to very poor psychological well-being for yourself, and you need to address it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's look at it from that point of view. You are a specialist, specializing in individual and couples coaching. Let's look
Mhm.
at individuals, men
Okay.
and women.
Okay.
Are mental health issues, and if you look at mental well being, is it different for a man and for a woman? How do they look at it? How does stress and all these things impact these people individually? How should one understand this? Because as a man, I will look at it from my point of view. As a woman, they will look at it from, and that's the reason for a lot of discord also. But individually, if you look at it from a mental health professional, how would you like to us to understand this whole mental being for both these individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, yes, there are differences between the sexes of males and females as it comes to the psychological welfare that they may have. With that being said, it is shown that women tend to be more neurotic and experience neuroticism more than men. What neuroticism means is the experience of negative emotions. They are prone to more negative emotions. This has to do with chemical influence. This has to do with biological influence when it comes to attending to children. That is usually why they experience more negative emotions compared to men. Okay. The other part of why men have an issue with communicating mental health is because of more societal pressures of what a man should be like. But the differences between men and women on that spectrum is not different psychologically. We have the same things as women. We feel the same things as women. Actually, we feel more than women because our amygdalas are a lot bigger. And usually, when a mammal's amygdala is bigger, it experiences more emotions. So, actually, we are more emotional than women. The difference is that we manage it differently and it can be expressed differently because of societal pressures. So, you have no crying, you have be like a man, you have get up and just do your job. Your only worth as a man is to be in subservitude to society and to women. Hey, and if you need to sacrifice your life because of that, you need to do it. So there's a difference within why those experiences of psychological symptoms are thought about differently between men and women, because women may have it more biologically of why they're more prone to negativity, and the acceptance of how the expression of what's happening on the inside for women is more accepted in a social practice within us cross culturally compared to a man, where even society says you're supposed to be in some certain type of way, so don't express those type of things because it's seen as weakness, you're not a man, or it gets diminished for what that experience may be for a man. But even though they have the same capacity or even more on the emotional and psychological side of things. So yes, that is the differences between males and females psychologically. and how we handle it.
Absolutely. And herein, brings me to this word called toxic positivity.
Mm.
Why is it such a negative thing? Means it, as you say, it can do more harm than good if we try and overcome negative emotions. What is the better way to do is people thought earlier on that you should, if you can tackle it yourself. Isn't this another handling your negative emotions, another word for resilience? So why this
Mm.
toxic positivity is bad and resilience is good? Help us understand the difference between the two, Philip.
That's a great question. So the fad of you because sorry, the fad of the word toxic positivity is a fad. It is not a psychological term that we would use in my profession if we were doing any type of documentation. So it's not a real psychological word. As a fad, one of the things that we have to address with it is the experience of being a human is mostly negative. So, in the arsenal of a therapist, we have a feelings wheel. Okay. Within that feelings wheel, we have 6 core feelings that we have within us in the human experience and has been evident no matter what. Okay. 4 of those 6 core feelings are negative. The other 2 are positive. So, why would I try to convince a client to try to feel about 20 to 30% positive when most of the experience of being a human being at its core is negative? So that one dismisses what a client or a person is experiencing. And then 2, it makes them have a false perception about what their experience should be, when in actuality, we need to acknowledge what it is. So if a client comes to me and says, "Hey, I feel depressed," and I said, "Well, you shouldn't feel like that." How is that helpful? They feel depressed. Acknowledge they feel depressed. Acknowledge this is the experiencing that they are having. Why would I convince them that you shouldn't feel like that? You should be positive. You should love yourself. You should be able to strive to have this euphoric feeling. But if you're not experiencing this euphoric feeling, something is wrong with you. No, the human experience most of the time is negative. And like you have mentioned with resilience, one of the things that you have to go through with negativity is go through negativity in order to be resilient, to have mental fortitude, to have will to get through the negatives of your life, things that you have chosen to be a part of, and things that unfortunately have happened to you and everybody before you and everybody that is around you. So understand that you can and are supposed to operate within the negative. You are going to be tired and hungry and dehydrated, and maybe your relationships with people are messing up. Maybe you're not getting to do what you want to do. Maybe that is requiring you for a very long time to serve other people. Maybe it's requiring you to give to society in a way that is draining you in some type of capacity. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you have to imagine, fortunately, from an evolutionary standpoint, there have been at least 100 billion human beings in this facet of our animalistic journey. You think that they would be able to get us to this point if they had to succumb to their negative feelings? You think they weren't operating within the code and lions and tigers and bears and viruses and all those type of things? Weather, like, bro, they got through a lot of nasty, harsh stuff in their life. And every single day that we progress as human beings on this earth, we have been able to improve, to last longer, to be better, to be healthier, to be stronger. But yet there is still so much quote unquote weak people with that mindset, because you have the fortunate circumstance of being in this circumstance now where you don't hunt for your food. You have shelter, you have warmth, you have electricity, you have medical, you have civilized structures and systems. So understanding that what came before, there were some strong-willed people and animals to get us to this point. So understand that if they can operate within the negativities of real and more harsh circumstances, you can, and you are built for that because they were built for that. So don't try to strive to always be in the positive. Take it for its full advantage. Be happy in moments, be joyful, be present, be euphoric, but don't think and use that as a fuel. You need to be in a good operating space. And if you are operating within the negative, that is what you were supposed to be doing.
Absolutely, Philip. And that brings me to the couples coaching part.
Okay.
As individuals, we have our own makeup and a man or women. As couples, if we look at it, you bring one couple together, take them 50 years back, they will be the perfect couple. Bring them to present times, they are staring at divorce. What has changed? How do you look at it?
Yeah. So there are two things that really have shown me in my novice experience working with couples. Is one is the unattended negative feelings of an experience with the partner. Okay. That leads to contempt. Okay. When it's unspoken and it's unaddressed, it leads to contempt. So, yes, there is infidelity, there is financial stuff, there is maybe physical and emotional abuse. Those are very little things and are factors and are real at times when it comes to the separation of a legal marriage. But the number one thing is unspoken negative experience and feelings that the couple has with one another. Because what it leads to is I don't feel validated in the safest space that I'm supposed to be in this world, and that is at home. Okay. The second thing that I notice with couples is it's not a space for people to talk about their feelings. So, man or woman, and it's funny because most of the time women are bringing the men to therapy. And then when you really work with a couple, the men actually appreciate therapy more than anything. Okay. Because again, it gets back to the differences between males and females that in society, men are not able to express those real vulnerable and childlike and soft experiences and feelings verbally. So imagine not being able to do that even in your romantic life. So you come to see a therapist or a counselor, and they create a space for you to talk about those feelings and bring them to the table so your partner understands what you are feeling. So most of the time, it's not about solving the problem. It's actually not about what happened before. It's not about the logical conclusion or analysis of the thing that brought you to counseling. It is you need a space about how those things make you feel. And just like I've mentioned before, when it comes to your rigorous educational life, in most ways, it's not something that is taught. Communication is not taught. Understanding of feelings are not taught. Managing of feelings are not taught. And then also being in relationships is not really taught in that same capacity. It's a life experience that you have to go through. So it's navigating that with a third party so that way you can have a safe space to talk about those feelings. And most of the time, I'm really catching myself not worrying about the details, what happened or what could happen, and the problem solving of it. No, how did that make you feel when she said this? How did that make you feel when he said this or did this? Those are the questions that I ask in counseling, and you will see the vulnerability come out when you stop operating in this and you start operating within this. And then most of the time, if a couple has the hope and understands that for each other, they can be able to work out. If not, there has been evidence from nonverbals to verbals to the experiencing that they're showing in couples counseling that with most experienced couples therapists determine the factor if this couple is going to last or not. But it has to be two vulnerable people that want to make it work and would rather choose the relationship and the other person compared to their own self-centered subjective needs. So those are the two things that I'll bring to the table when I work with couples of what I see that leads to that outcome.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn about relationships and mental well being, especially either it's an individual or even if it's a couple. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, Philip. I'm sure So what is the best way for them to do so?
Absolutely. So I have my own personal website, pqcoachingandconsulting.com. All of my programs, courses, books are on there. And then any type of contact inquiry that you would like to have, you can contact me through my website. So that's pqcoachingandconsulting.com.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.